Welcome to the Rise to the Challenge podcast. Joined today, he's the co-host of the Fitmess Podcast, mindset, life coach, and entrepreneur. It's Jeremy Grater. How are you doing today, Jeremy?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. Really happy to be here.
We're so excited to have you on the show to talk about your Rise to the Challenge. What we like to do with all of our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what were you involved in growing up?
I was born and lived a lot of my life just outside of Seattle, a little bit north in a town called Everett. Grew up with sort of your standard garden variety trauma with some alcoholism in the family and lack of ambition. And, I like to think of it as, if you asked anybody but my mom if I had any potential to become anything, everybody would have said, maybe not that guy. So it's been a bit of an adjustment trying to sort of relearn everything I should have learned, access to things I wish I had when I was younger, just ideas that you can be anything that you want and you can pursue your dreams. And it's okay to fail along the way and learn those lessons and pivot and figure out, sort of what that detour was trying to teach you.
Going through those traumas at a young age, was it hard to kind of interact with other kids because maybe they didn't relate to what you were going through? Or was that your way of escaping from what was going on?
I think I still struggle to interact with other kids. No, it's, when you've got that kind of stuff going on, I mean, again, nothing that I don't think most people in the 80s didn't go through, but there's a sense of, make yourself small, stay out of the way, don't be seen. There's enough sort of chaos and instability in the home. Don't add to it with your whining and your needing of things and having needs as a human being. So you tend to sort of get small and stay out of the way. And when you spend, most of your adolescence that way, it's really hard into your 20s and 30s and 40s to figure out that, hey, I deserve to be here as much as the next person. And I'm going to go ahead and take up some space and carve out a path for myself.
Did you find anything that you were passionate about during those times?
I loved video games. They were a great escape. Eating turned out to be really cool. But no, I mean, I tried out for the football team and I quit after the first day of practice because it was too hard. I dropped out of high school because it was too hard. I shouldn't say it was too hard. I wasn't motivated to try harder. Like everything that I knew was stay out of the way. So when I wasn't good at something, when I didn't hit the field and immediately was the greatest player to ever play the game or whatever, I figured, well, that's not for me. And I would give up over and over again. And that was sort of the path and the story that kept playing out over and over again was that, if I wasn't, pardon the old man reference here, but if I wasn't Luke Skywalker and chosen, by some grand wizard to make me the hero, then that wasn't meant for me. So that was sort of a lifelong struggle that it took some time to figure out how to escape from.
Did anyone try to stop you from making that decision to drop out of high school?
No, actually, it's really funny. I remember thinking, I'm going to tell my mom enough of this. I'm just going to go to work because this school stuff is for suckers. And I remember thinking that she was really going to push back and give me a hard time and say no. And I would spend, the next 2.5 years finishing high school. But she was like, all right, if that's what you feel is right for you, go for it. And my brother, I found out later, was like, is she out of her mind? Why would you just let him do that? But, she was a single mom trying to raise 3 kids by herself. And she had, at least one job, probably more if I were to ask her about it. So the last thing she needed was some kid hassling her about whether or not he was going to school or not.
I couldn't imagine my mom allowing me. She'd be like, okay, so once for not going to school anymore, where are you going to get the money? You're not going to be able to afford anything because you're not going to have to start paying for things in the house. And she was a single mom at the time. And it's just like, did you have a game plan thinking like after the last day of school or you were there at high school, what was next? Did you know what the future was going to be like? Or you're just like, whatever happens, happens?
Yeah. I mean, I had a job, I worked at a movie theater and I loved that. I've always loved movies. And, I loved that. That was a really fun thing to go and hang out with those people. I felt accepted there. I felt heard there. I felt like I had a role. I was promoted pretty quickly because I really liked what I was doing. And so, I saw enough people that I could relate to that I thought this is something that I can make a career out of. This is something that I don't need to go to college for. I don't need to finish high school for this. I'm already on a good path here, which obviously was not, did not last. That was not the long-term way that story ended.
Did there ever become a chance where it's like, I don't think I need to be here much longer working at the movie theater. I need to kind of go out and see if I can build up a career, build some more skills and things like that.
There wasn't really, I mean, like I said, I dropped out of high school and I had an aunt, and I still have an aunt, but at the time she was super supportive and really kind of swooped in and was like, hey, if you go back to school, we will pay for it. We will do these things. And I was sort of seeing that, hey, as it turns out, working in the movie theater may not be a lifelong career thing. So I went back to school and I eventually got my diploma and eventually an associate's degree and those sorts of things. But it was more like, I feel like I sort of followed my family's path of, no, just go get a better job. Like, this one's not going to pay the bills. Go find something that will pay better. And so I had a friend that introduced me to somebody else. And I ended up getting a job at a video store, which ultimately was where I met my wife. But no, there was never like this big like dream or this goal that I wanted to be. It was more just, how can I make more money to cover the rent next month?
Do you feel that if you had like a role model or someone that it was an inspiration to you at that age, that maybe it would have changed your mind about finishing high school at that time? Or do you feel that you were so confident in making that decision that nothing could stop you from changing it?
I mean, I feel like my brother was sort of that, like he sort of stepped in where my dad failed. And ultimately I don't know how he let me drop out as I look back. But like I said, my aunt was a huge influence, and ultimately I saw in her something that I wanted to emulate as I grew up. I was like, I want to be somebody who can eventually give back. I want to be somebody who will have the resources or just the heart to see that somebody's struggling, somebody's on a path that's not going to end well. How can I be of service to that person and sort of coach them into a different way of thinking or a different perspective to have a little bit more ambition and to have a little more belief in themselves that they could be more.
When you went back to get your diplomas and stuff, what was that dream job that you were wanting?
Well, I mean, it's sort of funny. I sort of had the back of my mind that I was going to become a talk radio host because my brother, who was sort of the father figure, was a really big talk radio fan. And he ended up, a friend of his worked in talk radio. And really long story short, I ended up going to work with him one day to see what he did. And when I walked into that radio studio, I just was like, whatever this is what I want to do. This is incredible. Like, you guys come in here every day and just talk about stuff. This is amazing. Like, how is this a job? So yeah, ultimately I remember telling other classmates, like, yeah, I want to be a talk show host. That would be super fun to be able to pull that off.
I love watching the videos now where the radio stations are having like, they're filming what they're like in the radio station and like showing like a behind the scenes. And I'm thinking, you would never get this from just listening to them, but their excitement, that they're having so much fun, and then seeing the video and you're like, I want to do that, because it's interesting that was what you wanted to be. And look where you're at now. It's kind of like a full circle, because I was going to be a game show host. That was like my dream. Yeah. And obviously I'm not a game show host right now, but I'm still a host in the way, and I still have that energy and stuff. And it's like, never what I thought at that time, this is where I would be at today. Is it crazy how full circle it kind of has gone?
I mean, not really. When I look back and sort of connect the dots of how it all came together, I mean, yeah, I was a guy with absolutely no experience, but a connection at a job application. And I applied for whatever you'll hire me for. I told the hiring manager, I was like, I don't know, whatever job you have, that's the one I'm applying for. And I think my first job at the radio station, I think my official title was something like weekend part-time overnight when we're super desperate board operator. Because I didn't know how to run a board. Like, the only skills I convinced them that being able to be a projectionist and play a movie in a movie theater was the same as running a mixing board for a live radio show. I was like, totally different. I mean, they're both putting on a show and sort of being behind the scenes, but otherwise, like, I don't know what all these faders and buttons do and how this microphone's plugged into that thing over there. And so I didn't get it, but I did know when I was in that door was an opportunity for an education. And so I didn't necessarily learn from people, but I started just kind of pushing the buttons and seeing what they did. And I saw the people in the newsroom and how they were recording sound, and I would just kind of look over their shoulder, and then I'd go and I'd record whatever I was producing and whatever I was, running the board for. and try and play with that sound and move it around. And how could I make this guy say something he didn't say, and all these little things. And then I got to know some of the producers and the talk show hosts that were in the studios 2 doors down. So, I mean, my first job was like literally pushing a green button every 20 minutes. So I would push the green button and then I would run down the hall and I would watch this live talk radio show happening in front of my face. And then I'd run back and push the green button again. And so that was super educational because I learned from these just amazing people in this top rated market how to do this just by being in the room. I was super lucky. And then as that was going along, it was my brother who a few years into it said, hey, I'm starting to hear about this thing called podcasting. I love talk radio. You work in talk radio. Because I'd eventually worked my way up and I was producing and doing some things behind the scenes. And my brother said, this podcasting thing sounds like it's going to be something. Why don't we take your skills and my love for this and let's just do a podcast. And if nothing else, it's just a way for us to talk once a week and just hang out. And I was like, yeah, all right, cool. So we started doing that. And that show lasted for 13 years. Wow. Nobody ever listened to it. Don't get me wrong, but it was good, right? I mean, it took 5 years to get good. We ended up bringing in my friend and turned it from like 2 idiots who didn't know anything about politics, talking about politics, to 3 drunken friends rambling and telling hilarious stories about their lives. And so it was a good show. And I'm really sad that more people didn't hear it, but I also found in doing that show, the connection to the audience that we did have. We made friends around the country. I flew to Florida one time. I think we were going to Disney World or something. And one of our listeners literally picked us up from the airport and picked me and my wife and child up from the airport. And we went out to dinner and hung out with them. Like we would get emails from people that were like taking care of their dying mother. And she was like, I'm super alone. I'm only with my mom, 20 hours a day, but I have you guys and you are the barbecue on the back porch. Like all these things. So it's just like, we're affecting people's lives with this nonsense that we do once a week. Like this is incredible. So the arc, as I look back, makes sense, but tell the high school dropout, hey, you're gonna change people's lives. No, he wouldn't believe that.
Did you feel when you got into the radio job that your confidence and kind of your skills were coming out more, like feeling more like, wow, I can believe in myself more. I have what it takes to do this?
No, I don't know that I've found that yet. I mean, don't get me wrong. I feel like I'm good at what I do. I feel like, we put on a good show. What we do is good. But it wasn't even like a lack of confidence. It was more like you and I are talking right now. That's what I did with my hosts. So when I was their producer and they'd bring me, oh, Jeremy, did you hear about the blah, blah, blah? And then I had to be the wacky sidekick. I just was talking to my friend, right? It wasn't like this special skill. And that was one of the first lessons I learned that really transitioned into the podcast that I've done is just being really authentic. Just be who you are. If you walk in there and try and put on a song and dance and put on some show and pretend that you're somebody you're not, that's not going to resonate with people. People are not looking for, a performer in that venue. People want a friend. They want someone to hang out with them. And so every show that I've gone into, every consulting job I've done, every producing thing that I've done, that's what I tell people. It's just be you and enjoy it and be okay with that. Maybe 3 people will listen, but if you do something you don't love because you're trying to make money and get famous, it's going to suck the soul right out of you, no matter how much money you make. But if you do something you love and you change 3 people's lives, that's super rewarding.
Was there ever a time where you talked about earlier that anytime something got hard, you would just quit? Yeah. Was there a moment during this job where it got tough, but you had that kind of second thought, I'm not quitting?
Well, I mean, there's the point where I almost got fired right away. There was, one of the shows I ran was this, it was like rebroadcasts of like old time radio. Mm-hmm. And it ran on like Saturday and Sunday night. There was 2 in a row on Saturday night and Sunday night. And it was like one was at 11, one was at 12 at night. And then the next night, the next 2 in the series came on. Well, I messed up one of them and I played the wrong one. So rather than then playing the one that was scheduled, I made the executive decision with like 3 weeks on the job to go, oh no, I'll play the one that makes sense to play after the one that just played. Because if I'm listening to that, I'm going to want to hear that. My boss just torched me the day after. He's just like, you do not have the authority to decide what goes on the air. Like we got all kinds of, calls from people that were mad that wanted to hear the one that was supposed to be on. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Like, who am I to have made that call? Like that was that was a huge, like scary moment. And so, but it came from, I was a manager before at other jobs. And so I just felt like, oh, this makes sense to me. I'm just going to do this. And that was a huge mistake. And had I not had a super forgiving and understanding boss, I don't know what I'd be doing today.
So after that experience, what was next for you?
It was just kind of a lot of bouncing around in radio and not really knowing what the long game was, sort of feeling like, oh, this is fun if I can make this work. There was some tragedy along the way. One of the hosts that I worked with, this is dramatic, but he was murdered. And it was horrible. He was like a mentor to me. He in many ways was a father figure. So that was very traumatic. And I, got through that and just never really knew what to do after that, because I sort of felt like I was going to be working with him for most of my career. And so I kind of floated for a while, and eventually I had my first daughter, and then, some health problems started popping up. It was nothing, nothing critical, no like cancer or anything. Just I was having some trouble with my knees, and I had the dumbest knee injury you've ever heard of. I literally getting out of bed, I hurt my knee, and went to a physical therapist, and she's like, it's probably some kind of nerve damage. I don't know. But the bigger issue is the way that your knees are formed. If you don't get on a bike and move your knees a bunch, you're going to end up doing what your parents before you've done and have your knees replaced. And that was all I needed to take it seriously. But I still was like, ride a bike? What am I, 6? Like, that's insane. So I went and complained to my brother, and he was like, dude, this is really simple. This is not a difficult problem to solve. You need to decide you're that weird guy that rides his bike to work every day. Just go buy some used bike and start bike commuting. And something about the way he said that, and the way and the time that he said it, I just immediately put that hat on and became that guy. Like, I bought a bike in a week and I started bike commuting, and it was incredible. I fell in love with it, mostly because it was, it replaced my bus commute, but also it really taught me for the first time what it meant to be truly in the moment. Because if you're riding on a bike on city streets and you are not paying attention to what you're doing right now, it's going to end badly. One time it ended badly, and I crashed, and it was terrifying. Yeah. I remember laying in the middle of the street. I couldn't get up. I had a broken collarbone, and all these people ran out and they're like, oh my God, are you okay? And it was super scary to sort of have that moment of like, I almost didn't get out of this. This was bad. And that was kind of an eye opener. And during my recovery, I was given some pain pills that were magical. I mean, they were really magical. And after about a week of them, I was like, I cannot take these anymore, because this is not going to end well for me. Because I'm somebody who, again, like, I came from a home where alcohol was in the house. I, as an adult, I relied on it to manage my emotions, to manage my mental health problems. And so that was adding to it. And I was already on antidepressants, trying to deal with my depression issues. And I just thought, this is not something I need to continue. And so I quit taking them. And it was interesting how much it just showed me that I could do something difficult. And so I thought, well, if I can quit those, I'm going to quit these antidepressants and see how that feels. So I quit those. And then when those stopped, I thought, well, geez, I don't really need to drink either. What if I just don't drink for a month? Well, that was 5 years ago. So I've not used alcohol either. And I was never like an alcoholic, but it was just something that I depended on when times got tough. I was like, oh, I can just drink those feelings away and not process them. What was amazing, though, is how getting on that bike, getting clean, started to just open other doors. And I met my co-host, Zach, through this process. And he was a couple of years ahead of me on the health journey. And I just saw him doing some things that, I laughed at and was like, well, that's crazy. I would never do something like that. And then I would find myself a year or two later saying, hey, did you hear about this thing? Like, you hear about this cold therapy? This is some pretty cool stuff. And he's like, yeah, dummy. Remember I told you about that 2 years ago? So we just started kind of opening up to each other and sharing these stories of, well, hey, I'm trying to lose some weight. I did this and this worked for me, or I'm doing this workout and this works for me, or just really sharing the struggle of being dads and the emotional toll that takes. And we sort of realized that we didn't really know other guys that had those conversations. We didn't see a space or know of a space where guys were sharing as openly as we were with each other. And we were getting so much out of it. And my previous podcast that I told you about had ended at that point because getting sober and getting clean didn't really play well with drunken comedy anymore. Mm-hmm. So Zach said, why don't we use your podcasting skills and let's share these conversations with people, because there's other men, there's other people out there that would benefit from them. And that was sort of how our show was born.
Before the show came about, was it hard for you to even open up to your wife or family about the things you were going through?
I don't know that it really was. I mean, I still struggle to open up to people close to me because there's a fear of scaring them away. If they see any sign or anything that resembles the voices that I hear in my own head, that I feel like that's going to scare them away. So that is still a struggle for me. But there is something about the microphone that becomes a therapist's office, which is really weird. Like there's things I'll say on the show that, like, if my wife asked, I wouldn't be like, oh, well, let me tell you all about my mental health problems. But then, there's something about knowing that this is going to help somebody that just sort of allows it to come out. And maybe it's because there's not necessarily somebody sitting there who's going to like try and fix it, judge it, whatever. And if they are, they're in their car in Ohio, or whatever. So it doesn't matter. So I don't know. I don't know that it's really any different, but I do know that there's something about sharing that part of me with random strangers that feels safe.
I can actually agree with that, because I've been on a journey with diabetes for 16 years.
Oh my goodness.
I haven't really gone so deep with people unless they're like close friends and family. But I did a show months ago, and for an hour and 40 minutes for the episode, it's just talking about my story. And you get onto that microphone and you just start talking. Yeah. And I to me, it's like, if I help one person, that's fine. If I help hundreds, even better. But that wasn't my mission. Wasn't to tell people how to live their life. It was just, this is my version, and maybe you can adapt to it, utilize something that I learned about myself. But when you said that it's easy to talk to strangers on a podcast, it's so true, because like for us, we're just talking and we don't know who's listening. I mean, There could be someone in Canada or some other country listening to this, and they're like, oh, that's interesting. I'm going through the same thing. But that's the power that a show has nowadays, is it's so global that anyone's story can help one person or so many people.
That was the thing. Zach was really insistent on doing it because he followed, all the self-help people, and he's like, these people change people's lives. This is awesome. And I was really hung up on, well, there's nothing on my wall that says I have any business telling people, here's what I'm doing to get healthy. You should do the same thing. And ultimately, through sort of, working the concepts and the ideas of what we wanted it to be, I got really comfortable with the idea that so much of my pain is imagined because I think I'm the only one. Nobody can relate to me. Nobody knows what it's like to hate yourself as much as I do, or to have this constant, battle with depression where it will show up and it's like, oh, well, you're not leaving your bedroom for 3 days. All these things that feel so lonely and so isolating. And then it's super rewarding when you do share that kind of pain and somebody's like, oh my God, me too. I get it. I've been there. I've been worse. I do this. And sometimes that helps. And there's just something so much, there's just so much value in that. I think that again, like you said, if there's that one person who's hearing me talk about the fact that when I get depressed, I don't want to leave my room. Mm-hmm. And they're like, God, I thought I was the only one. Then this whole hour is worth it, right? Because we just helped that one person feel a little bit less alone.
You talked about your kids. Are you more trying to show them that to be open and kind of tell people and share, for them to be open when they grow up, and if they're going through something, that they can be similar and be able to open up and share with you?
I mean, I'm very fortunate, or maybe I should say they're very fortunate to be growing up in a time when that is kind of the norm. Like they went to preschools where the primary focus was on sharing emotions, identifying emotions. What are they? Where are they coming from? And we had, I mean, just our kids had an amazing preschool experience, and they gave us a bunch of resources so that we could go to them and say, your feelings are valid. They matter. Your voice in this family matters. Like, be big, be seen. Like, don't ever let anything I say, bringing all of my baggage, you know, reflect on you. Don't take anything that I say when I'm in a bad mood, or if I say the wrong thing, or, you know, I lose my temper and yell at you and tell you to go to your room or something. It's not about you. That's all about me. And so I'm constantly like, if I screw up, I'm apologizing as quickly as I can. I'm showing them my flaws. If I'm going to cry, I'm going to cry in front of them, because they need to see that their dad is capable of the full, you know, spectrum of emotions. So emotions are very welcome in our home, and we try and create a space for them to share them. But, you know, I fail because I that's not something I was raised with. It's something that I've had to, in the second half of my life, really figure out, how do I allow this thing that I never experienced to happen every single day. So I fail a ton, and I just try and own up to it whenever I can, and just share with them that it's okay. What they did was okay. I'm the one that failed them.
Do you enjoy biking for fun instead of, or do you still commute through biking?
I have since moved out into the middle of the mountains in British Columbia, so there's not much of a commute anymore. But I love biking.
Is it a different feeling now at where you were before, when you started biking, to where you are now, and kind of there's a different kind of mindset to it?
The thing about, I think, biking that I love, and why I try and convince people that struggle the way I did before starting it, is that there's something that sort of happens automatically when you get on the bike, because you immediately, I mean, you're completely unstable. You're on these two tiny wheels, trying to balance, trying to find the right speed where you don't feel like you're going to die, and not going too slow that the car behind you is going to smash into you or whatever. I mean, you're just forced into a mindful presence where you have to be in that moment. And it's amazing, because you can be having the worst day. It's just, the morning was way off. Everybody's yelling at each other. It was crazy. And you're just mad about it, and you're disappointed in yourself for the way you handled it. Now you got to go deal with whatever, you know, clients or work you have to do. But you get on the bike, it's gone. Because if you're not paying attention to what you're doing right now, none of that other stuff matters anyways. So that's, I mean, yeah, whenever I get the chance, I love to get on that bike, because it just brings me into the moment in a way that almost nothing else does, because you really don't have a choice.
Which location's better for biking, or your favorite, where you are now in British Columbia, or when you were in Seattle area?
I mean, when I worked and lived in Seattle, it was better because it was built into my routine. I had to do it. Otherwise I had to ride the bus where people got stabbed all the time. So my chance, the odds I was riding was either get stabbed or get in a bike accident. And I liked the odds on my bike better. So I liked that it was built into the routine, and there really wasn't much of a choice. There wasn't should I go bike today? Where now I work from home, so I don't have to go bike anywhere. I have to get the bike out of the shed and get the helmet on and all the things. Like, it becomes this bigger deal, and we're out on this big country road where there's not a lot of cars, but if there is one, it's going 70. So it's like, I don't really want to ride next to that guy. So, I think if it was based purely, if I had to make a decision based purely on where would you more likely ride your bike the most, it would be back in Seattle.
Has fitness changed your mental health, mental mindset into a greater thing now?
Oh, entirely. And it works both ways. When you start to find some clarity in your head, you start to find room for, I also want to take care of my body.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes it goes the other way, where you're just the noise in your head, the chaos, the stress, the anxiety, the depression, all of it is too much. But you get into a gym and you focus on lifting a few heavy things, or running to the point where you just collapse. Again, all that stuff fades away, because you've just got to be in that moment and lifting that heavy thing, or running and paying attention to what you're doing. And there's just something about, I don't have the science to back this up, but to me, I feel like all that energy in your head, all that noise is energy. And it's just going, I want to move. I need to be processed. I need to go somewhere. So if it comes out in the form of sweat and exhaustion, it still comes out. And, there's people that approach that with art, with music, with a bunch of different things. for me, I found a lot of relief in physical exercise to manage my mental health for sure.
For someone that's listening to this interview that's questioning, how do I get started? As I had that same kind of struggle just getting started. What would you tell them for someone that has been through that journey?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's 70 pounds lighter than I used to be, who can lift more than I've ever been able to lift, who can jump farther than I've ever been able to jump, like, I'll tell you, there's no one thing, but it just starts with any one thing. It starts with finding something you will do every single day. Yep. So for most people, that's a 10-minute walk. You can go take a walk around the block and call it good. Do that for a week, 2 weeks, whatever. At some point, you're going to do that and your body's going to go, you know, you can do a little more than that. Why don't we do a second lap? Tack on 5 minutes. Then maybe add a little bit of water to your routine. But whatever it is, swimming, whatever, like just find, if you ride a bike, whatever it is, just commit to something you know you'll do every day. And just decide, I'm the person that does this every day. I'm the person that goes for a walk every single day. And then maybe you'll go 5 days. But you went 5 days more than you went last week. So whatever it is, just find something you can commit to and decide you're the person that does it. And then just do it. And then it's amazing that opening that one door will introduce you to 3 more doors, where now all of a sudden, oh, maybe I'm going to try the yoga studio down the street. I've been driving by it for 10 years. Maybe I should pop in there and see how it's going. And then all of a sudden you're in there and they're like, oh, we're going to do a quick meditation at the end of the class. And then you do that for 10 minutes. Like, oh God, I feel so relaxed. I feel at peace. This is great. So now you're meditating and you're doing yoga and you're walking and you're drinking more water. Like all these things in a year, in 2 years, you'll look back and go, man, if somebody told me I was doing these 25 things every day, there's no way I would have done them. But because you did that one, you know, you put on the shoes and you went outside one day, it'll change your life.
So you mentioned that you're a podcast host called the Fitmess Podcast. What has been the greatest moment from doing that show, especially during this time?
You know, I think more than a moment, it's just selfishly, it's been an amazing accountability tool. It's really, really difficult to do a show like this week after week after week, and to go on other shows week after week after week and sort of share advice and tips and tricks and all the things when, you know, you're sitting on the couch eating Doritos 5 nights a week. Like it's really, you know, it's been a great motivational tool. So that's another one thing you could do, is start a podcast talking about this stuff, because all of a sudden you're all kinds of accountable to a bunch of people. But I think that's been one of the things that's been really helpful, just selfishly, is just that I have to take better care of myself. Otherwise I'm a complete phony and a fraud. And I'm doing the thing that I've been advising people not to do for years and years.
How did you meet Zach before you started?
We were parents, right? Like our kids, I think my wife and his wife, they were part of the same like Fit Mom group where they would go, I think they did triathlons and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And it was one of these things where they were like, oh, we should get the husbands together for a brunch. And we got together and, you know, it was your typical guys like, oh, hey, how about that sports ball event that happened the other day, you know? And because you got to keep that guard up, because you never know if that other guy is the kind of guy that you can say, hey, I really struggle with my mental health. How about you? Yeah. But there were just enough sort of cracks in the armor as more and more brunches and get-togethers happened, where we were like, oh yeah, I do that too. Tell me more about your struggle. So yeah, it was really our wives that brought us together.
As you're doing the podcast, have you ever had that time where you're like, what else can I do? Is there more that I can offer?
I mean, it's funny you should say that. I mean, I'm not necessarily here to sell anything, but that's literally the point we're at right now, where we are developing a mastermind course where we want to be able to help more directly the listeners of the show, the people that really just need an accountability buddy, right? I mean, so many of the things that we say we can't do, or the things we fail at doing, they really come down to nobody's there to push me. Nobody's there to hold me accountable for the things I say I want to do. It's really easy for me to say, oh, I want to lose 20 pounds. I'm going to go to the gym every day. And then the next day you wake up and you're like, I'm not going to the gym. I'm exhausted. Yeah. So we just want to offer a space where, whether it's, you know, I'm trying to build a plan to quit my job because it's soul sucking, or I want to lose 20 pounds, or I just want to go to the gym more. I want to learn to meditate. I want to do yoga. Like, it doesn't matter what the thing is. There's people in our Facebook group all the time that are like, oh, I'm just trying to get the motivation to get started. Or, you know, we have conversations with people like, oh, one day I'm going to start. Oh, New Year's, I'm going to really get on the horse and do a thing. None of that's, whatever that thing is, you got to start it right now. And if you don't have somebody there, for a lot of people, many people are self-motivated and they can do that, and good for them. This may not be for them. But if you're the kind of person that's tried 10, 20 things and given up after day 2 or whatever the thing is, like, we want to be there to help. We want to support people because we've been there. I mean, it wasn't until this year that I really got into going to the gym again every day, because I hated going to the gym. But I found a plan and I found a way to make it work for me. And I decided I'm the guy that goes to the gym every day. And so now I hold myself accountable to doing that. And we just want to like show other people that you can do that. You can make that decision. Like, it really starts there. It really starts with deciding I'm the person who. It can be the person, I'm the person who's going to go to space one day, whatever it is, like, decide. And then you can start mapping out the steps you're going to take to get there. But without that decision and without the commitment and, in a lot of cases, accountability, it's really hard to do. So that's what we want to try and offer people with this.
Right now, with social media and forums, websites, there's so many people out there that says, I can coach you, or I can be that accountability. And it's so hard to know who to trust because everyone's a fitness influencer and stuff.
Right.
Do you feel that people that are joining your Facebook group are listening? They're coming for you because you have gone through the challenges, you've gone through the struggles. So they feel that they can get more out of you for your knowledge and insight on things, instead of someone who's already fit and they haven't had that true on experience.
Right. Yeah. There are a ton of people that you will see their pictures on the program and you're like, they've got the 6-pack abs and they're rocking it. They can do all the things and they're making all the money and they got all the yacht photos and all the things. I don't relate to that guy. I don't know who that guy is. I don't know that I'll ever get to that level. And I don't know that I need to get to that level. What I do know is Zach was a few steps ahead of me on this journey and he helped me. I'm now a few steps ahead of other people on this journey. So I want to, send the elevator back down and try and help people come up. And so I think that's what sets us apart, is that we're not that much farther along on the journey. We've been at this, collectively for 20 years, but it's, the last 10 years, the two of us have been trying a lot of different things. And I do the same thing where I look back at the last 10 years and go, I can't believe all the things that are just sort of part of my daily routine now that I never would have considered taking them all on at the beginning. So we want to show people, like I said, just start with that one thing and we'll help you. We'll get you through that first door so that you can find the next 3, and then we'll find a way through those. But there's no path to create. It's the path is there. You just got it cluttered with a lot of stuff. So we're going to help you clear a path to that first door so that you can get through it, and then we'll figure out what's on the other side.
I love how you mentioned about the connection, and kind of that's similar how I am. Like, I connect with, if I'm looking at something fitness, it's related. It's like, I want someone who's gone through something I've gone through. So like, as a diabetic, I look at people who are diabetics in the fitness because they struggle with diabetes. Well, not struggle, but their challenge is diabetes, but they're also doing it in fitness. So I can relate to them more. And I think a lot of people are trying to find those individuals where they can relate to them because they feel that they know what they're talking about, instead of like the jacked fitness influencer who is just photoshopping most of the time. It's like, you can't build that connection with that person. Yeah, some people will like looking at that, but it's like, no, like, I don't trust them at all.
The hard part about that guy is that he sells a great product.
Yeah,
right? It's really easy to go, oh, if I do what he says, I'm going to look just like him. But the minute you fall down, and the minute it gets hard and you fail, or you find yourself, crying in a pint of ice cream or whatever, it's so much harder to go to that guy and go, oh, I failed. Because you're going to feel like that guy never fails. I've failed a dozen times today, right? Like, this is a struggle. Mental health, physical health, there is absolutely nothing easy about it. So I don't want to come out here and tell people, oh yeah, I've got all the answers. We're totally going to solve all your problems. This is going to be amazing. What I am going to say is that I'll hold your hand through this and we're going to figure this out. I might not have the answers, but together we're going to find the answer within you, because that's where most of them are anyways. You just got to quiet your mind long enough to figure out, what is my intuition telling me? What is it that I'm supposed to be doing to overcome this challenge?
I mean, I wish I could just eat a bunch of bags of Doritos and look very fit. I mean, if it was that easy, I think everyone would be doing it right now.
Totally.
looking at your journey, do you feel that each step you've gone through has helped you get to where you are today, instead of if you wanted to change something and not have gone through those different items?
Yeah, that's one of the big lessons from Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way, that I took away, was that like everything that is worth doing is difficult. You're going to fail along the way. It's going to be hard. Anytime that you've got the choice between the easy path and the hard path, take the hard path, because it's so much more rewarding. You're going to get so much more out of it. I have taken so many shortcuts in my life that were shortcuts to dead ends that went absolutely nowhere. They don't exist. I mean, you know, they're there. They'll be sold to you for $3,000 for a 2-month program, but they're nonsense. They don't work. So, you know, I've gotten to a point where I honestly don't think I regret anything in my life. And that's, to me, that's a benchmark. I want at the end of my life to go like, yeah, I get why I failed. I get why things were hard. And the second half of my life, I chose that a lot. But yeah, it's all made me who I am. Every stupid decision and every mistake, and every time I've hurt somebody's feelings or done something, you know, that I wish, you know, in some way I could take back. I don't wish I could take it back, because otherwise I wouldn't have learned that lesson. And I would have probably, you know, made that offense even worse without that lesson later in life.
So what does the future look like for you? What are you hoping to accomplish in the next few years, both personally and professionally?
I think, you know, we're really just trying to help people. I want, through this mastermind, to develop a course that is available to anyone, anywhere in the world. I know that a lot of times a live mastermind is a barrier for people because they are in a time zone where they can't be up and whatever. So I want to learn from what we gather in these meetings, and be able to create a video course that people can then just get whatever they want and have and still have access to us, right? To be able to guide them and coach them along the way. And, you know, I also just help people with their podcasts. That's another thing I do. So I'm always just trying to find new ways to help people that are in the situations that I was in when I needed help. And so a lot of that right now is health and fitness and taking care of people's mental health. But it's, you know, some of it's also just reaching out and podcasting and helping people to help get their message out so that they can help someone else feel a little bit less alone.
So you mentioned how both yours and Zach's wives met through fitness and triathletes. Is that your future? You guys going to all four do a triathlon together? I'm feeling like we're heading in that direction.
We should. That's one of those mindset things that I struggle with. My wife is literally, there's a triathlon in 4 months that she wants to do, that she keeps talking about training for. And it's one of those things where she wants someone to be accountable with her. So she keeps trying to talk me into doing it. The one thing I know is that every time I've ever tried to train for any like 5K run, like any like official thing where you're going to get a medal at the end of it, I get hurt every time because I push myself too hard. Where I know now, I just go, all I got to do is go to the gym today. That's it. Go put in my 45 minutes. And I'm not trying to become something. I'm not trying to lose weight. I'm not trying to like get 6-pack abs. I'm going to do the time. Just go in there and just get a little bit stronger. But I know if I'm like, oh, in 4 months, I better be able to run and bike and swim and do all the things. I'm going to push harder, and then I'm going to blow something out, and then I'm going to be on the couch for a month, and I'm going to start all over. So that's one of my own, limitations that I hold myself back from truly competing or challenging myself in that way, because I'm worried about hurting myself. But now that you've said that, I feel like maybe I should probably, that's a fear I need to face and get over it.
Well, I had that same kind of fear because my friend has always wanted me to do a Tough Mudder with him.
Brutal.
And I was like, at this, and I've been on a bit for the last year. I've lost 50 pounds, been on a fitness journey, and I was just like not comfortable at the time doing it. I'm like, it's going to take me a little bit of time. I need like to prepare for this. I can't just go in there cold and do it. And so I think we looked up, and there was like one in like 2 weeks. I go, that's not enough time. And then it's like next year, but then we're trying to find like something that's like still similar, like Spartan races and things. And I go, I need to train. And I'm like, I've been biking like crazy. I need to go run or something, lift weights and things, because I want to be prepared. I want to go in there feeling confident, not, oh, I didn't do enough to try. Even though if I was at there and I didn't do enough, I'd still try my hardest to finish that course because I ain't quitting. I want that medal at the end.
And the position that you're in where you just lost 50 pounds. I mean, I'm 70 pounds lighter than I was, and that was a few years ago, and it stayed off. But I still struggle with not being that guy anymore. Like I'm still pretty convinced that I'm going to get too winded. I'm too heavy. This is going to be too hard. Like all of that, like physical baggage literally is still with me mentally. So a lot of times I'll look in the mirror and I'm like, who are you? Like, I don't even, because in my head, I'm still much heavier because that's who I was most of my life. So to make the leap from, I can barely take a walk down the street to I'm going to go to a Tough Mudder. That's a big mental hill to climb in a year.
Well, even the mental struggle, like I always vision I'm still that person 50 pounds heavier. Like I don't feel confident, but when I look in a mirror, people are like, you look good. And I'm like, to me, but it's me feeling that way. I think it's one of those, a lot of people, until they see that exactly how they want to look, it's not going to be good enough. But I think I try to stay positive. I try to stay motivated. I think of the positive of this is my goal and this is what I want to accomplish. And that has helped me stay on track each day to get to where I want. Because if not, I could go back the wrong way. Like I tell myself, I haven't had fast food in a year, which is tough. Love me some McDonald's, Taco Bell, all that stuff.
Right.
But it's a mental mindset that I've had that this is what's best for me. And when I'm like, oh, McDonald's sounds good. Nope, not going to do it.
Yep. Well, and just a warning, whatever the goal is, it's going to be satisfying for like 10 minutes.
Yes.
Right? Like you're going to get there and you go, oh, I hit it. Like the number on the scale is the thing I've been chasing for a year and a half or whatever it is. But you're still going to feel like the same guy 2 years ago. You're going to feel like the guy yesterday. So, for someone who's going through something like that, like make the decision to drive past McDonald's because of the way you're going to feel in 2 hours.
Yep.
Make the decision that you want the treadmill to be a little bit easier tomorrow than it was today, because we get so caught up in that number on that scale, or I'm going to be happy when I'm going to reach this goal and then everything's going to be just fine. And it is awesome for 10 minutes. And then you start going, well, now what? Now I'm going to celebrate. Let's go to McDonald's, and the cycle starts all over. So I've been trying really, really hard. And that's what, like I said, like I don't want to set the goal of competing in a triathlon because I know it will be rewarding for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Where I know now, just telling myself, I want to go to the gym today so that I know that I'll keep going so that in 10 years, I can still play with my kids on the floor. I can still be an active dad and be an active participant in my life and the lives of the people around me. So to me, that's the bigger goal, is still being able to keep up and not so much a number or a medal or whatever the thing is.
See, that's why I don't own a scale. I don't want that
They're
number
toxic.
Because if you go up in weight, your mind is like, oh, now I got to push myself, and it can get extreme. So that's why I'm like, anytime I go to the doctors is the only time I see a scale. I'm like, that's the only time, because you see posts all the time. Don't go on a scale. Don't look at the number. It's just a number. It's not. Yep. It's all mental. But
the scale that I do use one, and I try to only do it every couple of weeks, but it's one where it's like the full body readout. So it's body fat percentage, it's water, it's protein, it's all the things. But the first number that flashes is the weight. And I'm like, that effing number hasn't changed in 6 months, and I'm busting my ass every day. It's so frustrating. And then, for someone with a mental health thing like depression, it can be so triggering. I'm like, well, screw it. I give up. I'm not doing it anymore. But I've now gotten to a point where I can let that go and go, okay, it's just a number. It's one of the 50 I'm gathering when I stand on this thing. And the rest of those are moving the right way. Just because that one's not moving, don't get hung up. Don't let it ruin your day.
The final question I'll ask you, for someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
I think probably the biggest thing, and this is something we're really pushing right now, is that motivation isn't real. It's just not a thing. It doesn't ride up on a magic horse and take you off for a ride to accomplish the things you want to accomplish. Motivation is built by the hard work that you put in to become the person you want to become. So if you want to get stronger, I'm sorry, you have to lift heavy things. They're usually in a gym, or they're, maybe milk jugs in your fridge or something. But You've got to lift heavy things if you want to get stronger. If you want to get faster, you have to go outside and practice every single day. If you want to get better at Minecraft, you have to get on Minecraft every single day and get, whatever your thing is. No one's going to show up and go, okay, here we go. Let's go off and accomplish your goals together. So just decide what the thing is that you're trying to do. Decide you want to lose 50 pounds in a year, whatever the thing is, and then map it out. What does that look like? Does that mean I can't go to McDonald's anymore? Yes. Does that mean, I need to get on a bike? Probably.
Yep.
Whatever those things are, but you just have to start doing them. Maybe it's that 10-minute walk I talked about, but you just have to act. You have to get up and decide, I'm going to do this, and take action, because sitting around and waiting and wishing and hoping that motivation is going to magically show up, it ain't. Nobody's coming to rescue you. You're the only one that can get you out of this mess or to get you to where you're trying to go. So just start building it, and the motivation will follow, because the action becomes the habit, which becomes the life that you then live.
Well, Jeremy, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many people, and we're excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. This is really great.